All right, I want to call the meeting to order. Steering meeting for June 1st, 2020. First of all, before I get started, I want to welcome Commissioner Elam. Thank you for being here. She'll be serving on our committee. And before I start, I need to get this taken care of. The meeting of the steering committee is being conducted electronically pursuant to Governor Bill Lee's Executive Order 16. I would ask for a motion that conducting the meeting electronically is necessary to protect public health, safety, and welfare in the light of the coronavirus. Do I have a motion? Commissioner Cush, motion. Do I have a second? Commissioner Reed is a second. Rachel?
Commissioner Ely? Yes. Commissioner Cush? Yes. Commissioner McAdoo?
Yes.
Commissioner Reed?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Chairman Harris?
Yes. Sorry. All right, I need to follow that with a roll call. Go ahead, I want a roll call for attendance.
Attendance.
Yep.
Commissioner Ely? Here. Commissioner Cush?
Present.
Commissioner McAdoo?
Yes.
Commissioner Reed?
Here.
Commissioner Stevens?
Here.
Commissioner Rather? Commissioner Rather? Absent. Chairman Harris?
Here. All right, let's get to,
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Rather called in, said he was on vacation, wouldn't be here tonight.
okay. All right, first thing I want to do is I want to approve minutes from our last meeting. I call on Vice Chairman Reed.
Mr. Chairman, all members of the committee have received a copy of those minutes through our SharePoint, and I have read through those minutes, and I see no error. I make the motion that we approve those minutes.
I have a motion from Mr. Reed, Commissioner Reed. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Cush. Rachel?
Commissioner Ely? Yes. Commissioner Cush?
Yes.
Commissioner McAdoo?
Yes.
Commissioner Reed?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Chairman Harris?
Yes. All right, moving on. I want to announce 2 vacancies for the library board. You can get those applications in to Rachel at the main office of the mayor, and they need to be in 1 week before our next meeting. Moving on, we want to discuss and look for a resolution to allow commissioners to attend meetings remotely. This will be for health and business conflicts. This will be after the governor's executive order. We have talked to the legislators, and they can change the state law on this, which is 844-108. And this legislation can be introduced January 21, since the deadline has already passed for this year. So I want to open up discussions as to how the commissioners of this committee feel about continuing Zoom meetings, since they have been pretty successful through this tough time. And please understand that this is for health or business conflicts or vacation. This is not taking, we're not saying that you can not have to come here and just be remotely. So it is going to be for those circumstances. So is there any discussion on this?
Mr. Chairman, I would be happy to make an offering. I would like to see it continue for the 2 reasons that you mentioned, business being one, or health the other. I personally would have used the Zoom meeting option many times in the last several years if it would have been an option when I was on vacation. So I would have been happy to call in and be on video and done that time. I'm assuming you are just talking about committee meetings and not full commission. I don't see full commission on this list, or maybe it's intended to be, but it's not clearly stated. But for committee meetings, I would certainly be a positive voice for continuing that option.
Well, thank you, Commissioner Cush. I have talked to the legislators. They are willing, like I said before, to take this up in committee. So one of our legislators, which is Representative Charlie Bond, said he would be more than glad to take this matter to the House. So what I need to know is he would like to see a resolution which would help this cause if we were in agreement. So, Commissioner Reed, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, I think several of us have discussed this during the last few weeks and what it has meant for this situation we've been in. I most definitely think that it would be a great possibility for health as far as our members are concerned. I know in situations here for different commissioners that have had to go out for surgeries and things of that type, that it does can put you in a situation where you can be out several weeks, and where if in today's technology that we have here that they can do that, that gives you an opportunity to represent your constituents. The thing that I think we would have to watch as far as business is that it doesn't become too regular. That would be the thing I'd have to look at there. I mean, I see where that it could come up suddenly, that a commissioner could not help it whatsoever, but we'd have to get to a point where, I don't know how or what, you set a limit of how many times you can use that opportunity or whatever when it deals with your business. I mean, we have told our constituency out there that we're here to represent them and that we're going to be here to do the job for them. And it should be every effort that we do to take that initiative to be here to do that. And we should place that first. But I can see where, in particular in health, I know in commissioners that would put things off that really they shouldn't be doing. I've said so many times, I've got a really bad back that I keep getting urges to have that back fixed, but I won't do it because I've got to be here, and I'm not going to do that. But I see where I know Commissioner Cook has had situations where it would really have helped her to do that vote. So, yeah, I can see it very much so in health situations, but I think we'd probably have to set a limit as far as business is concerned, because you might have I'm not saying now, but somewhere down the line, we might have a mobile commissioner if we're not careful.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Reed. I thought really hard about this, and I'm going to agree with you on a couple points. I don't want this to be where we can just not show up to meetings. It's not for that at all. It's for business conflicts, and you said something about a limit. And I suggest one per quarter. So that's one every 3 months, no more than 4 a year. And then as far as health, I mean, gentlemen, we don't know what that could be. But I think this would be a good thing, and I know the legislators are wanting to push this through for us, but it's got to go through this committee, and if you feel that this is something that we want to do, then I'll need a motion to take this to the full commission. So do we have one?
I will make a motion that we have the ability to continue virtual meetings and for allowable for health or business reasons, and limit those to one per quarter.
I have a motion from Commissioner Cush. Do I have a second? Commissioner Reed, second. Any discussion?
Mr. Chairman, I have some comments.
Commissioner Stevens?
Thank you. I've been doing all of these meetings from my home or from my office because I interact with a lot of people at my office, and I don't want to, come and spread something possibly to somebody else. But moving forward, after the governor's order expires, if he does not extend it again, I don't think we need to allow virtual or electronic meetings as an option. They're very convenient, it's nice, but when you take the job, you agree to come to the meetings, and sometimes you have to plan around things or plan your vacations or whatnot so that you don't miss meetings. And, you know, sometimes you get sick, and that's okay. But who's going to referee this? I mean, if Commissioner X calls in and says that he is sick, how do we know that that person's really sick? Or, you know, how do we know they're on business and not on vacation? So I just don't know how you're going to police it. To me, it's either going to be yes or no. You can do a virtual meeting, or we're not going to have them anymore after the governor's order expires. I like them. I think they've been very helpful and very productive during this pandemic, but I'm just not sure moving forward that's going to be the best way for us to have open meetings for our constituents.
Thank you, Commissioner Stevens. I have a motion on the floor, and I have a second. Any more discussion?
Chairman, if I may just interject from
County Attorney?
the legal side of things, just thinking through this, I work with Ms. Lehue in drafting these resolutions that come before the County Commission for approval, and I just want to make sure that I understand things, that the idea is the idea to, after June 30, when Governor Lee's order expires, from that point until whenever, that at least just in Rutherford County, the county commission or the committees can meet virtually. Is that the idea?
No, that's not what I'm saying. This will not go in effect until the law is changed. So once the governor's executive order is up, we start meeting in person. This is only the legislators are asking us to give a resolution to support this so that we can be able to have meetings remotely for health and business conflicts.
I understand that clarifies it for me. So in other words, this would be something that we're urging the General Assembly to make general law across the state for all counties.
Yes.
And if they attempt to do so early next year, then it could apply here. And I might be putting the cart before the horse, but I imagine what that law might look like is, should it pass, it would give the local governments the ability to opt into it or make that an option. And I'm guessing here, but that would make sense to me. But anyway, you've clarified it. Thank you, Mr.
Yes.
Chairman.
Now, and this will not be introduced till January 2021. All legislation is closed, so that'd be the earliest. And still, the law has to be changed, so it's subject to that. So is there any more discussion? Rachel?
Commissioner Ely? Yes. Commissioner Cush?
Yes.
Commissioner McAdoo? Commissioner Reed?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
No,
Chairman Harris?
Yes. All right, let's move on. Now, I have been your chairman for going on 10 months, and every one of you know me of how my stance is on the opioid epidemic. And I'm not going to change anything on the way that I conduct meetings. I've always opened up with our drug overdose statistics. And I want to talk with, I have Sonia talk about our drug program, drug testing program. But before she gets up here, what I want to share with you, in April, we had 79 overdoses resulting in 6 deaths and 1 suicide. In May, we had 67 overdoses resulting in 9 deaths and 2 suicides. So in those 2 months, just about past what this entire COVID has done and turned our entire county upside down. So what I'm trying to say to all of you is we have to be aware of this. It's, you know, I keep telling people all the time, you know, the storm isn't coming, the storm is here. And we had to, as a commission, I just feel that we had to address this, and people are going to say how and why. The how is we had to do everything we can to address it and let people know what we're dealing with. And the other way is to get behind community programs, get behind churches, and try to find a way that we can deal with this head on. Thank you. I know I get off on that, so I apologize. The next thing on our agenda is drug policy discussion. What this is I want Sonia Henderson to come up here Stevenson, Sonia Stevenson, to come up here and tell us a little bit about our drug policy. Sonia, come on up.
Mr. Chairman, while Sonia approaches the lectern, would you repeat those statistics from April and May?
Yes, sir. In April, we had 79 overdoses, resulting in 6 deaths and 1 suicide. In May, we had 67 overdoses, resulting in 9 deaths and 2 suicides. Thank you, Commissioner Cush. Okay, Sonia, tell us a little bit about our drug policy for the county employees.
Okay. Thank you, Chairman Harris. And nice to see you back, Ms. Ely. So to give you a little bit of history about the drug-free workplace policy, it was originally, my predecessor had started down this journey before I came. He started it in November 17th of 2005. He started looking at the policies and the practices. Also around that same time, we were looking at on-the-job injury programs. The county used to have workers' compensation through the state. And under the state's program, the drug-free workplace gave you a discount on your premiums if you participated in a drug-free workplace of 5%. So my predecessor had started down that path and got it implemented and became a policy December 14th of 2006. Then in January 22nd, 2007, he had requested that testing actually begin. So initially the policy was just an awareness, it was education, it was making sure that we had an EAP program, that if somebody had an addiction, that we had things in place with our insurance providers, that if somebody needed inpatient or outpatient care, that we had those things. So initially it was just the basics of the program. The actual, I began with the county on November 19th of 2007, so the testing had not been implemented at this point in time. However, I continued down the journey, looked at many different things, had discussed with the commission and the mayor at that time, and the testing, to begin the testing process is actually began with the county June 27th, 2011, with an approved implementation date of September 1st, 2011. Since that time, in May of 2017, we updated it again to include safety-sensitive positions as part of our random processes. So that's where you look at all your positions across the county. There are going to be some positions that are obvious of nature, our law enforcement, people in corrections, anybody who work with children, probations, recoveries, those type things. But also in the safety-sensitive also included any of our employees who, as a routine basis, drive a county vehicle to perform their duties. So someone who goes out for building codes, those type things would also be included. One of the other things that we did in implementation is we have to, under the drug-free workplace program that's outlined by the federal government and the state, is we have to do annual training. So 1 quarter out of every year, we do a training program. And it changes. If there's new changes in the laws, we send this out to every department. They take the training, the employee does it online, then we have a record of who always completed the training. So it keeps it on the forefront of our employees' minds, letting them know that we have tools out there for you. If you need help, if you have a family member who needs help, that we have some resources that we can make sure that they're aware of. But it also lets them know that there's also reasonable suspicion testing. You know, we let them know what type of testing that we have. So there's randoms, there is post-accident, there's reasonable suspicion, to let them know what that looks like. It also talks about the ownership of each of us to be responsible for the people that we work with and our families and our friends, to make sure that we're helping them to ensure that they have a substance-free lifestyle, to give them words of encouragement, also to make sure that they're aware of the tools that they can pass on to other people. So a lot of it, of our drug-free workplace, is about the education, is also about life services EAP during this current pandemic that we're going through. We've sent out lots of materials about that to make sure, for the very same reasons that Commissioner Harris talks about with people who commit suicide or do overdose, people in stressful times you see an uptick in substance abuse. So a lot of our program is revolved around that. The other piece of our program is that we have grants. The county gets lots of grants for various reasons. It could be for a new ambulance, police cars, testing, equipment. It could be for any number of things. Well, on the grant application, there's a question that you have to answer that you have a drug-free workplace. It is a requirement under federal law to apply for a grant that you have to attest that you have it and that you're executing it and that you have a policy in place and a practice that you're abiding by. Well, I was having to sign off on those. As the HR director, whenever it came to the grants under Title VI, I was having to attest that we had a program that we're abiding by. So we've made sure that we've looked at our policies and practices based on what the federal and state guidelines are requiring as it relates to grants and other things. The next piece is that we had to make sure that we updated all of our job descriptions. So each of our job descriptions, when we post a job, will have the title. It will have whether the position is an exempt or non-exempt under the Fair Labor Standards Act, and also it asks whether it's safety sensitive or not. So if it says that it's a safety sensitive, it says subject to random drug and breath alcohol testing. If it's non-safety sensitive, it says, NA, it does not apply. So when a person applies for a job, they know coming into it that they're going to be subject to random drug screenings. That's one of the criteria that's outlined under a drug-free workplace. The other thing is that we follow all of the federal guidelines. We use all their forms, all their data, in order to make sure that we're in compliance. We have a third party who randomly selects from our safety-sensitive pool. Every month, I send a list to them. They select the names and they send them back, and then I send that out to the designee in each department who will send somebody for their testing. That way, it leaves it out of my hands that if somebody calls and says, there's a problem with John Doe, we really need to see if we can get him in a random. I can't do that. I don't have that in my authority. I go strictly by the book based on what our third-party administrator sends us. The other thing is we have a federally certified drug testing facility that reviews our testing samples and our results. And we also have a medical review officer. And we selected an agent that was being used by the state of Tennessee for their drug testing, and we use the same agency, and it's National Toxicology Specialist, and our MRO is Dr. Greg Elam. So that's out of Nashville. So we meet the criteria for our education, for how we set up our policy, for who is in our safety sensitive, that we have an off-site facility, and that we also have our own MRO. I also checked just to make sure that we were still in line with what our sister agencies were doing, and I checked with several different ones to see if they were still doing drug testing. I've got Chattanooga, Hamilton, City of Lebanon, Wilson County, City of Murfreesboro. I didn't check everybody. City of Clarksville, Franklin, Williamson County, Montgomery County, Nashville. Of course, the state of Tennessee and the federal government are all doing testing on their employees as well. Another thing that I would like to add to this, I'm probably giving y'all more information than you need, but this was originally, and until I started looking into this, Ronald Reagan actually put it in for the federal government for their employees. He did this back in September 15th, 1986. There was an executive order, and he outlined and gave each agency head the right to set up their own policy and to determine who is safety sensitive. So some people may ask, well, what is deemed safety sensitive? Does the federal have guidelines? Well, they left that up to the agency to determine who is safety sensitive. Now, there's some criteria. Somebody has a CDL license, that's part of DOT, that's just separate and above. But then you get into those things that could be deemed could cause harm if somebody were not doing their job. And one of the items that they put in here, and I thought, let me see the other one. SAMHSA, which is also the federal laws, also had some rights about it, but I was looking for a specific phrase that they said. It says, in regard to drug testing of federal agency employees, and each federal agency thereof establishes its plan based on its mission, its employees' duties, and the potential consequences to the public health and safety or national security that could result from the failure of an employee to adequately perform their duties and responsibilities. So they've left it to say, what is the liability for your specific agency? You know, what is it that you have to run a risk for? So when we set this up, there's been some question around whether we should have employees who are required to drive a county vehicle through the course of their jobs. That has been one area of our random drug testing that's been contested by an elected official. And so my thing is it's our responsibility to make sure that when we put somebody behind the wheel of a vehicle, that they're safe for our citizens. They make it a law that people can't drink and drive, or they make it a law that people can't be on drugs and drive for substance abuse. And I just feel like when we looked at this for the reason of keeping our citizens safe and also the employees safe, is one of the reasons that we chose that anybody who drove a county vehicle to be included in this. It's not somebody who just does it every once in a while, but the courier that takes records to Nashville, and that's their only job, they're on the road all the time. Our building codes people are on the road all the time, so those are the reason that those are in there.
So let me stop you right there.
Sure.
Based on federal law, now, what do they consider safety sensitive compared to what we're doing as a policy?
They said pretty much well, you said federal law?
Yeah, I'm talking about federal law.
Right. That was the clause that I read. It just says that it's based on the employee's duties and their potential consequences to the public and safety or national security. That anything that they do, that if it would impact or harm another, that they were considered safety sensitive based on their rulings.
So are we currently drug testing everybody that drives a county car?
They are in our random pool to be selected, yes.
Okay. So I have a question for our county attorney. So if someone sues this county over safety sensitive, federal law trumps state law trumps county. So does that put this county at any liability? Do you understand the question?
No.
Okay. What I'm saying is someone sues this county for
With amendment.
for drug testing for safety sensitive, and they feel that they're not safety sensitive, so they should not be drug tested. Federal law has one definition for safety sensitive, and we have one. So federal law trumps state and county policy. Am I correct?
You're correct in that general statement. I'm happy to look into your specific question. I can confer with Ms. Stevenson and our policies on it. Again, I think that this goes to whether our policies are in conformity with state and federal law. And hearing Ms. Stevenson, I think she said that they are, but I'm happy to work with her and do a review to ensure that they are.
Yes.
Because the last thing that we would want is for the county to be sued if we're not applying the drug testing correctly in conformity with federal law.
And I will tell you that CTAS, the Attorney General says where the issue comes in if somebody just has a blanket, says we're going to test everybody. Everybody's going to get a random test, everybody. That's what they discourage. When CTAS goes out and does training for our newly elected constitutional officers, and each year they'll do training as well, they discuss the drug-free workplace in their meetings. And so that after they have a meeting, and I can always expect some phone calls. And what it says is a blanket test, and this is CTAS, this is their legislation from the most recent. A blanket drug testing policy for all county employees and elected officials would violate the United States Constitution. However, it says the Supreme Court has decided 5 government drug testing cases in recent years, and the court found that employees in positions perform duties fraught with risk of injury to others that even a momentary lapse of attention could have disastrous consequences would be authorized as safety sensitive. It said it is necessary to consider the position held by the employee or official and balance the government's interest in testing against the individual's privacy rights. And our insurance ties into this as well. So one of the things that I have to answer every time when we had CCMSI, and now we have, and I can't think David's company, what's the name of David's company with our insurance?
Assured Partners.
Assured Partners, yes. And I have to attest to things in our policies that these are things that we actually do. They have our handbook. And so we get a discount at the county for people driving our county cars on our county vehicles because we do drug testing.
Tanya, just curious, what's the percentage of county employees who drive county-owned vehicles as a requisite for their job?
I'm sorry, say that again.
What's the percentage of county employees that drive county vehicles as a requirement for their job?
Oh, my goodness. Well, I mean, you're going to have law enforcement, corrections, our ambulance service, anybody in public health is going to be included. So, I mean, that's going to be, but specifically to drive vehicles, probably 2, 3, 4, maybe 25%, 30%, I would guess. And the way the policy runs is for DOT, anybody who has a DOT license, so that's going to be our garbage trucks, our solid waste, that's going to be our highway department. 50% of their employee population have to be tested annually for a drug and 10% for breath alcohol. For the rest of the population, we can follow that same methodology if we choose, but we do 20% of the rest of the population for the safety sensitive, which means a department may or may not get somebody pulled in an entire year, like we've got several departments. And it doesn't, every single department doesn't have a safety sensitive position. Like the trustee's office has no one. The register of deeds has no one. The county clerk has her courier. And HR doesn't have anybody. Risk management, their safety coordinator. So there's not somebody in every office. So you have to think that it's people who are out in the field through the general operations of their jobs. Were there any other questions?
Well, yeah, I have some.
Okay.
So constitutional officers, they don't have to use your policy handbook. Is that correct?
That's correct.
They can issue their own policy.
Correct.
They can issue their own random drug testing.
They could. Mm-hmm. If they have a grant, they're required to.
All right. Is there any more questions for Ms. Stevenson? Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, I hope that we understand a little bit about drug testing now with the county. All right. If there's no questions, I want to move on. Gentlemen, you have on your iPads and on SharePoint Commissioner Stevens' litigation list. Do we have any questions regarding this? Since there is none, we'll move on. Is there any other business? Since there's none, do I have I'm sorry?
Chairman, I just want to say something. I want to make a public thank you, if I could. There are two individuals within this building this evening that I think we owe a lot of gratitude to. Starting about 10:30 Saturday morning, they were involved in keeping our citizens and this town and this county and this courthouse safe. And I just want to say thank you to our Sheriff, Mike Fitzhugh, who's sitting here tonight, and our mayor. They were involved in getting all of that put together, and they did an excellent job in getting a plan that was well executed by our Sheriff's Department and the City of Murfreesboro, as well as working with the Mayor of Murfreesboro to get that accomplished. I know I talked to you yesterday, and you were up here too to see what was happening, and started about 5:30 yesterday morning. I started getting phone calls and people wanting to know what's happening, what's going on, what's being done, and whatever. And I just wanted to say thank you for what you two did and how we got this going. It was an amazing piece of work to see how it came about, and with the little bit of the problems that we did have, or the less injury that was involved in what happened here and the damage to property. I was here in the morning, yesterday morning, and then right after lunch too. And I mean, if you were up here that morning and seeing the store owners putting up plywood and seeing the fear in their face and their actions and their talk, and understand that, you know, these are individuals that's just trying to come out of what they've been through the last few months, as individuals that have been trying just to keep their head above the water, and they're just now coming out to get some of that done. And now this was happening, and they were trying to put board and batten just like we was getting ready for a hurricane. And it just sort of would break your heart to see here we were going again. And I've heard today, you know, people say, well, how much did this cost? How much did this cost to do this? You know, the feeling of somebody caring and protecting them, I think it was probably worth what we had to do this. I think that's very vital and very important of what was accomplished this weekend by our officers and those up front. I'm also including the firemen and the fire departments involved in this, our ambulance crew, everything we had going, and it worked like clockwork, and I really appreciate that. And I just wanted to do, as I said, a public congratulations and a public thank you for the job well done.
Thank you, Commissioner Reed. I also would like to point out, I had talked to Sheriff Fitzhugh early in the morning of that day, yesterday, and I talked to the mayor. Both men had plans, both men were prepared, and I felt like that we didn't have any injuries, and I felt like we did a good job. And Sheriff, this commission is an elected body, and we are leaders of this county. And to be able to have complete responsibility that you had and take care of it. I know I, as the chairman of the steering, thank you. And I thank you, Mayor, as well. Not only in this, but also in COVID. You know, so we're going through, Commissioner Elam said something about 2020 being a remarkable year. I think we all agree, and it's only halfway over. So we've went through some really difficult times, and I think as a county, not only have we risen to the task, but we've taken the lead. And that's something that I'm proud of. From the EMTs to the Sheriff's Department to the administration, we have taken a lead, and people are watching us. And that's a testament to the leaders of this county. Is there any other business?
Mr. Chairman.
Mayor?
Hey, Mr. Chairman, since Chairman Pettis opened the door, I too want to say the word is outstanding of how our city law enforcement came together yesterday morning. We met starting at 7 o'clock at the Murfreesboro Police Department. We had representation from every agency, from law enforcement side. We had our fire and rescue, we had our EMS. Chris Clark did an outstanding job and kind of helping, because he kind of led the 2017 Black Lives Matter structure, I guess, and preparing. He just glad I got him from. He accepted the position, came from Laverne, because he did a good job. Sheriff Fitzhugh and Chief Bowman from the city, they were working as a team. It was just, it was remarkable to watch it all come together. Everybody divided up, everybody knew what their responsibilities were supposed to do. It all came together very quickly, because we had heard that there was going to be another protest at 12 o'clock, not 3 and 6. So everybody was under the gun to try to get everything accomplished as quickly as what we did. From 7 o'clock in the morning until 12 o'clock, it went quickly. But I was so proud to see everybody working together. I didn't see one harsh word. There was no egos involved. I mean, it was all about accomplishing. Everybody had a mission. We collectively, for Rutherford County and Murfreesboro, were doing the right thing, headed in the right direction, knowing we had to protect our community and our citizens. And I was just so proud of all of our law enforcement. Sheriff, my hat's off to you and everyone in your department. Please share that with them. The county commission, is grateful for what they did, and especially protecting this courthouse. This is the symbol for our entire county, and everybody was. When we left the police department and got back down here, the city had already jumped in, and they must have 50 people working their streets department, but they were setting up the inner perimeter with barricades, and they had the garbage trucks and the dump trucks all blocking all 5 streets coming into the square. So it was impressive the way we reacted so quickly. Unlike Nashville, they were 2 hours too late. It was kind of scary, but I think having watched that Saturday night, it showed to us we were going to be focused. We were not going to let that happen to us, what happened in Nashville. And people were volunteering, coming down here, helping carry 2x4s and sheets of plywood and boarding up. It was it was remarkable how we turned out. So it's not over. Okay, so we hope and pray that it is. But we still had a little bit of protest today, Sheriff, out at your location. They marched from Lowe's out to the Sheriff's Department, and hopefully nothing will happen tonight. But we just know that we live in a great community and we're strong. So I say congratulations. Thank you.
Well, I think, this commission, we welcome protest. I mean, everybody has a right to exercise their First Amendment rights, but you don't have a right to tear up our property, and you don't have a right to riot. And, like I said, we're kind of getting off here a little bit, but I just want to move on, but that is something that you should be acknowledged for. Is there any other business? Since there is no other business, this meeting is adjourned.